Okay, well, first and foremost, I'm going to say a big thank you to everyone watching or listening around the world. And it's Liam Harshby back with you today, guys, with episode 458 of the Simply Inspired podcast. And today I'm joined by a very, very special guest. And I must say that I'm very honored to have two-time Olympian and Commonwealth Games champion, the youngest ever male to compete in judo at an Olympic Games, and also the first person, along with his brother Nathan, to compete together as brothers in the Olympic Games as well. Winner of multiple Australian and Oceania titles as well. An absolute legend of judo, Joshua Katz. And today, guys, we're going to be talking not only about the sporting side of his achievement, which is obviously massive, but we're going to be talking about the mentality that it takes to reach such a high level and stay consistently at that level in one of the toughest and most skilled sports in the world. We're going to be sharing some life lessons that you guys, the viewers, can take away and use in your own life, whether you're an athlete or whether you're doing something else. Some of these lessons are universal. I also need to mention as well that Josh is a person who really gives back to a lot of people, really contributes to a lot of people in their lives. He speaks at schools and speaks to the youth all around, over 100 schools, I think, to do with the Black Dog Foundation. And we'll find out more about that afterwards. But I've seen him speaking everywhere, just passing on his knowledge, inspiration, motivation, and life lessons to so many people. So stay tuned, guys, for some great content. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired channel as well, just so I don't forget to say that. And my friend, thank you so much. As I was saying just now, before we started recording, 9 p.m. there, 12 p.m. here, but I appreciate you accommodating me in your evening and everything. So, yeah, just a big thank you for making time for this, mate. Thank you.
No, thank you for having me. It's a very warm introduction, so I appreciate it. I don't know how I'm going to top that, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Well, look, I know you're a very humble guy, and that's part of that's part of why I wanted to do this today, by the way, because the way you conduct yourself as an athlete and as a person, is very positive. And, I'm a big believer in that, by the way. Before we get into anything else, people can sometimes, they can have accomplished most amazing things, but if the people are very arrogant or they don't have that good attitude or they just want to talk about how great they are, they're not welcome on here. I mean, it doesn't matter how much things. So because you carry yourself and you've got a good heart, that's the reason for me wanting to introduce it in that way. Now, anyway, getting into the story with you and getting into some of these things. Now, what I'm not going to do today, I'm not going to go like one, two, three, four, this happened, this happened, this happened. But I do think it's important to go back in time briefly and talk about your very early years. The reason being, I'd like to go back to the early inspiration, the people who encouraged you, the people who instilled the belief in you that you could do great things, and where that initial fire was lit inside of you, basically, right at the very beginning. So let's start there, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I started judo when I was 5 years old. My parents were my very first judo coaches. My mom coached me from probably about the age of 5 until about 12 or 13, and then my dad was my main coach from about 13, really ever since, until more recently. My brother has started to play a coaching role over the last couple of years, but I think we were really encouraged, my brother and I, from a early age that we were allowed to try lots of new things. And I loved judo. I was really passionate about judo, but I played lots of other sports. I never really knew what it was that I wanted to do. I was very ambitious. I had really big goals that I wanted to go to the Olympics, or I wanted to play professional soccer or win a Grand Slam in tennis. I had no idea what it was going to be. I just knew that I had really big goals in whatever it was, the path that I was going to go down. And my parents were always really supportive. They let me do essentially whatever sport that I wanted, whatever activity I wanted, but they just tried to instill in Nathan, my brother, and I from a really early age that whatever it is that you wanted to do, you had to work really hard at it. If you wanted to achieve anything in sport or in school or whatever it was that we were passionate about, that we had to work really hard at it. And I think they tried to instill in us, I guess, an idea that if you make a commitment to something, that you have to follow through with that commitment. So I think from a pretty early age, we started to learn the discipline that it took, that you didn't always have to feel like going to training. You didn't always have to enjoy it necessarily. But if you said you wanted to achieve something, that you had to work really hard at it on the good days and on the days where you felt like crap as well.
Mhm. Absolutely. Well, that's a great way to kick things off. You see, Great life lesson then. Like I was saying to, at the beginning, people can learn from this, guys. Everyone listening, whether you're an athlete, whether you're a judo athlete, whether you're any kind of combat athlete, whether you're doing something completely different, your business, your education, any kind of thing, these lessons will help you. So what a good way to kick things off. Now, obviously you mentioned there about like the early ambition, how far you want to go, these big things being on the horizon. So I think it's good to touch on like a few of your early successes, or not specifically those successes themselves, but just the whole mindset of when you first started achieving and that dream of going far started to realize itself in the very earliest stages. I think that's also a fascinating time to focus on because people see where you are now, but giving this the context of where it all began, I think is super useful as well.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I was very, very competitive as a child. Like regardless of what I was doing, I wanted to win. If it was the maths test at school or cross country or swimming, or it didn't matter what I was doing, I was really competitive and really wanted to win. But I never had the emotional connection or the emotional attachment to most of the things that I was doing. I was really competitive when I was in it, but if I lost, it was okay. It didn't bother me all that much for most of the things that I was doing. And then I guess as I started to get a little bit more invested in judo and was spending more and more time into judo, I noticed that compared to a lot of the other things I was doing, it was judo that really bothered me when I lost. I was not necessarily the best loser, and it would really, really bother me. And I would just come back and want to train so much harder the next time. And if somebody beat me, I was like so determined I would have to beat that boy the next time I fought them at the next competition, which I never really had, I guess, that like built-in rivalry in a sort of other activities that I was doing. So I think probably around the age of 10, 11, 12, I started competing a little bit more often in judo at sort of like a national level. And I had a fair bit of success pretty quickly. I was medaling at the nationals, and I think I won my first nationals when I was maybe 12 or 13. And I guess my parents had quite a big profile in judo in Australia. Judo's not the biggest sport, and they were both very well known in the community. So I was always sort of looked at my brother before me, and then me a few years after as, oh, that's Rob and Kerry's son. Like, so they're going to be good. And there was just always this, I guess, this expectation that we were going to be really good just because our parents were really good and were really good coaches. But personally, I never felt a massive pressure. I knew there was a lot of expectation from other people, and I sort of really wanted to live up to that expectation that I really wanted to be really good, but I never sort of cowered away from it. I never shied away from that. I just sort of always felt like I almost just took it as belief. I took it as belief that even though a lot of these people didn't necessarily know who I was, that all these people thought I was really good, and that gave me a lot of confidence that I could be really good as well. And I had no idea how to get to an Olympics at 12, 13 years old. You have absolutely no idea how hard it's actually going to be. But I think I just was sure from probably about the age of 15 that like judo, the Olympics, that was what I was going to do. I was all in. I stopped playing soccer when I was about 15, and then I decided that judo was the one. Like I was all in.
Wow, that's really cool. I mean, yeah, the clarity aspect, and when that really became the one that stood out to you, I love that. It's very very cool. But yeah, some great, absolutely great lessons in there as well. Absolutely love it. Now, the teenage years though is an interesting time as well because when you're saying about winning championships there, 12, 13, 14, as you or you stop playing soccer 15, especially as you come to that kind of age, obviously there's a lot of other things that start coming into it with people start going out and girls and obviously you already had the profile anyway, so I'd imagine there was a bit of that. But in terms of like basically not getting distracted and staying on course, I mean that's the question. I've seen some really, really talented people over the years go off track and get caught up in things that really don't take them anywhere, don't last very long. And then I've seen other people actually less talented who, they keep working and they go really far. I mean, obviously you've got the natural talent, I would say, and you've got the mindset, but nonetheless, keeping working hard, keeping focused, keeping that that laser beam on, like you said there, the Olympics, this type of things is where I'm going. How did you do that during those teenage years when all this crazy stuff comes into play?
Yeah, it's tough. And I mean, I see it all the time now with like younger kids that I'm helping to bring through now. And you sort of go through that age from probably 16 to 20 when you start getting some freedom and independence, and there's girls and parties and all these other things going on once you can drive and you get money and things like that. And it just pulls you in so many different directions. And I think I was pretty lucky that about at about 16 years old, I got a chance to go to England for the first time. And we trained at a full-time training center in Camberley Judo Club. And there was at the time there was probably two or three uh, Olympians there that represented Great Britain, and some of the people there were people that I guess I had watched on like DVDs as a kid growing up. Like there was a guy training at the time was a world champion. Like it was really really incredible seeing these people there, and I think it really opened my eyes to what it was actually going to take in order to try to get to a really good level in judo, because in Australia, it's not a really popular sport. And I guess I had already reached the top of Australia. I think I was ranked number one as a senior when I was almost like just before I turned 17, when I was sort of still 16 years old. So um, I sort of really needed that eye-opening experience of what the really good guys that I was aspiring to get to actually were doing in their life, in their lifestyle. Like they were training 3 times a day, 5 days a week. That was their life. And granted, they still enjoyed life. They still went out and had fun and partied and all this other stuff as well. But I think it really showed me at a young age that it was going to take a lot more than what I was already doing if I wanted to get to another level. So, I mean, it's tough. You come back to school, and a lot of my friends and people that I'm hanging out with at school have much different goals and much different lifestyles than what I want to do. But I think probably towards the end of school, when I was about 17, 18, I started, I guess, to smaller, bring my circle a little bit closer together from the people that were, I guess, supporting me to help me get closer towards my goals, and then other people that were sort of pulling me away from those goals. So I think as I got a little bit more clear with really what I wanted to achieve and how hard it was going to be to get there, that I guess I brought my circle in a little bit smaller. But yeah, it's tough. Like when I'm at lunchtime and I'm eating salad and some plain meat because I've got to lose weight for a competition on the weekend, and all my mates are doing this on the and stuff like that. So it's definitely tough, but I think it really makes you have a strong sense of belief in what you actually want to achieve.
Absolutely. I love that. Absolutely love that. The vision, the clarity, the goals. But yeah, who you surround yourself with, mate. I mean, that's massive. But like what you were saying, they're going to England and, seeing the top guys and that really putting things in perspective. I mean, yeah, that comes up over and over again when I do these talks, who you have like around you and that kind of thing. But you have mentioned there as well, you mentioned kind of like a switch in the belief structure here. What I mean by that is like it's you have to do more than what you were doing in the beginning. There's kind of this leveling that this is going to be harder than I thought. This kind of thing. And you mentioned that a couple of times of that like slightly more naive view to like, man, this is what's really there kind of thing. Did you ever get discouraged? I mean, I know we're keeping this on the positive, but I also want to talk about bouncing back from adversity because when people are seeing this, it's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows and lovely things. I mean, it's obviously it's worth it because you love it. I mean, the passion comes over here and all of that stuff. But in terms of those hard times, in terms of those times where you thought, is this worth it? Am I doing the right thing? Is this going to get there? But obviously, and keeping going through that as well. Basically, I mean, you get where I'm going. How you did that would be a really good lesson, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I could tell you 5 hours of just all the hard times that there's been across the journey, but I won't. I'll spare you the boring details. But um, certainly, as I've got older, you have different priorities in life and different responsibilities that can definitely pull you in different directions. But I think definitely when you're younger, you don't necessarily have as much responsibility. You don't even appreciate the things you've got already. Like you don't appreciate your family as much and things like that. So it seems a lot easier to sacrifice time with your friends and family and things like that when you're younger, because I guess you just take those people for granted a little bit. But yeah, definitely I think the first sort of times that every time I sort of leveled up in competition, that I had some really good results and then started fighting the next level of competition, it's always discouraging because you are telling yourself you're good enough and other people around you are telling you you're good enough, but no one can ever really tell you how long it's going to take, because it's not really fair on a 17-year-old to tell them that you might not achieve any of your goals for 10 years. Like it's not something that you want to tell them. It's not something they want to hear. What you tell them is that if you keep working hard enough for a long time, eventually you can make all of your goals come true. Like you can make all your dreams come true if you work hard enough for long enough, but no one can tell you how long it's going to take or how hard it's going to be. So, um, yeah, I think it was definitely a challenge when I sort of left school. And I mean, I was very fortunate that I got the chance to qualify for the Olympics when I was 18, which was incredibly overwhelming and eye-opening experience at the time that I probably that sort of dumb, naive thinking was like that carried me through all the way through the Olympics that I went there thinking I could beat anyone here. When like in reality, there was no way I could beat a lot of the people there. Like I was good, but I definitely wasn't as good as a lot of the people there. And I think sort of probably the year after the Olympics was where I probably had the biggest eye-opening mental struggle, I guess, up until that point in my career, just because off the back of the Olympics, even though I'd lost, I thought, I'm pretty good here. Like I went to the Olympics at 18. The following year, I went back into the juniors. So I thought there's no one at the juniors that went to the Olympics. Like I'm the best here. Like I'm going to go to these tournaments and just win. And I didn't win. Essentially, I went to these tournaments and didn't do that well in a bunch of different tournaments in Europe. And then the World Championships, I lost first fight in juniors. So it was a very crashing back to reality that just because you had achieved a lot up until that point, like no one cares. No other 18-year-old, 19-year-old cares. If anything, they want to beat you even more because you've done something that they haven't done yet. So, yeah, I think probably that first year after that Rio Olympic experience really showed me that if I just keep doing the same thing, I'm not going to get any, like, it's not going to happen. Like, if I want to achieve more, or even if I want to achieve the same thing that I did, is getting to another Olympics, it's going to take a lot more work and commitment, I think, than I'd shown or that I'd needed to show up until that point.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you know what's really cool about that is also the humanization of your experience. And I know that might sound a bit strange, but like when people see athletes on a high level, obviously other athletes will be relating to this entirely, but for people kind of outside of that, the realism of the highs and the lows and the experiences that you have that are not always, portrayed. I also think that's really cool as well. And it does show people, if they're chasing something, as I said at the beginning, any type of dream, then these things are going to happen, but it's very much how you respond, it's not the situation. So I think that whole thing is very valuable. The Olympic experience itself, though, I mean, this is something I do want to touch on. The first one now I'm referring to, obviously, 18, being there in wow, I mean that level. It's interesting because I'm not going to actually ask a specific question about it because if we kind of focus over here, we might miss something over here. There's a bunch of things I'd like to ask you, but just in terms of, you mentioned there the overwhelming nature of it, the level of the competition. There was a few different things, but just the Olympic experience in your own words, making history, being that young, being part of something as massive as that. Let's go a bit deeper into that in your own words, please, champ. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a whirlwind of an experience. Like I only graduated from school in 2015. I started traveling a little bit as a senior just for experience. It was never with the goal of trying to qualify for Rio. My goal was always for Tokyo. And then I just had a lot of success really quickly fighting some of the senior tournaments at the beginning of 2016. And it went to the last qualifying tournament in April in 2016 in Canberra and pretty much rocked up to this tournament. And if you win it, you go to the Olympics. And if you don't go to the Olympics. And won that competition in Canberra. And it was about 3 months, 4 months from then, I think 3 months from then up until the Olympics. And it just went so fast. Like it was crazy. Obviously, my brother had qualified as well. So there was quite a lot of media attention around us. One, that we were the first brothers from Australia to go to judo. I was the youngest man to go from Australian judo ever. So there was just a lot of attention on us and it was really cool. Like I enjoyed it a lot. I certainly didn't lose focus and sight of what we were there to do, which was to do well at the Olympics, but I really sort of enjoyed the build up. But I guess when I look back and reflect on it a lot, I took so many of those experiences for granted just because at 18, already the conversations were, how many Olympics are you going to go to? You're going to go to two, three, four, maybe five. Like these were the sort of questions that I'm being asked and people are talking to me about before I'd even competed at my first one. So it was definitely something that I took for granted, a lot of those experiences just because just expected I'd get back there again in the next once or twice or maybe even three times more. So, but definitely like just being in a village with all the Australian athletes. And I mean, I was like a sporting nerd as a little kid. I watched all these different DVDs of Australia at the Sydney Olympics, Athens Olympics, Beijing Olympics. Like I watched all of it. So I knew everyone. And now I'm in the team, like I'm having breakfast with these people that I watched on TV when I was a kid. Like not even a kid, like maybe 4 years earlier, which I was I was a child 4 years earlier, and I'm watching these people on TV, and now we're in the same team competing at the same event, like we're equals almost. So that was like a little bit, that was very it was a very humbling experience, I think, and certainly the result was disappointing, but I probably knew that I wasn't capable of getting close to a medal at the Rio Olympics, and I guess I could get over that disappointment relatively quickly just because I was young and I knew I would have another chance later in the line. But probably most of my strongest and like best memories from that Rio Olympic experience was just being able to do all of it with my brother, like having all of those experiences together. We went to the closing ceremony together. He warmed up with me when I competed. I warmed up with him when he competed. Like all those things are just like memories that you can't ever forget. Like it was incredible.
Wow, that is amazing. That's why I said, you see, just in your own words, because there's so many different things to that experience, and it is an incredible achievement. I mean, I know you said there about obviously the final result, but to us, kind of, mere mortals looking in on what you're doing there, I mean, even getting there at that age or anything, because the thing I really like about this with you is it's not just the whole medal thing; it's the whole like aspect of how you've grown to be that person who's ready to be there. And I know obviously you had more work to do on that, but if that makes sense, like going back to what I said earlier, the way you carry yourself and all of that stuff. I mean, it's incredible. There is one thing though that I want to focus on with the Olympics. We'll talk about the next one as well. But you mentioned about that qualifying tournament when it was kind of like all on the line of like you make it to the Olympics or you don't. And I know you said earlier that, like, you didn't feel that much pressure when you had the expectations on you and things at a young age, when you were still in school and everything. But something like that, where it's literally an all or nothing thing, when I'm going to get there, I don't. That sounds like pressure to me. And obviously, that leads me into like the whole mental aspect of like handling nerves and handling, um, the sort of the big match quality, as they call it, when everyone's watching you and, this kind of thing. And I know you had been doing it for years up until that point, but it's another level with the Olympics, and to some extent, like I mentioned, with that qualifying tournament. How did you mentally handle the pressure, or if you experienced any nervousness or adrenaline or that type of stuff? Because again, it's something that everyone's going to go through to some extent with whatever they want to do as well. So that's the reason why I'm asking, is handling that the right way so important, as you know all too well.
Yeah, I mean, I said I was when I was sort of growing up, I blocked out a lot of the pressure and the nerves and things like that. But that day I was bricking it in 2016, like I was absolutely dropping my bum out all day. But I think all of the other athletes from Australia were all in the same position. It was the same position for everybody. And I think I looked around at a lot of the older athletes that some of them handled the nerves fine, some of them didn't handle the nerves well at all. And I think in that moment, I just thought all I have to do is just win. And I guess the qualifying system had later changed for the next couple of Olympics. It made it a lot tougher. And at that particular tournament, if I beat somebody that I had beaten already, I think twice before, then I would qualify. So of course you're nervous because you know there's so much on the line. But I think I just because I knew I was better than this person, that I just go and fight and everything will be okay. And maybe that was just like the 18 dumb and naive coming through, but um, I think I was able to sort of just concentrate just on me on that one day and then not try to take into account too many of the other people. But I mean, it also helped that I was better than the other guy that I had to beat. So if I had to compete against somebody that was much, much better than me, I would have had to fight 10 times better. Who knows what would have happened? But I think that probably calmed my nerves somewhat on that one day because, I mean, later in my career, I had the exact same situation again before the Tokyo Olympics, which was the World Championships was the very last tournament. And I went up against somebody that had beaten me already. So completely roles reversed. I knew that this guy was better than me and I had to fight at my absolute best in order to beat him. So completely different experience several years later. And the nerves were probably exactly the same, if not worse, the next time around, I think, because you really know how hard it's going to be and what is sort of required of you to do that. I think when you have the full belief that you're good enough, then sort of can calm your nerves a little bit, but the nerves I think get a little bit worse and make you feel like a little bit more sick when you're not 100% confident in your ability. I think that's the times where it's the toughest.
Yeah, that makes sense. That actually, I find that interesting. Actually, as you were saying, like the benefit of youth kind of earlier on, and then as you gain more experience, it actually amplifies that. I mean, that's interesting. But that does lead me to a very important lesson that I think your life, one of many, but I think your life kind of exemplifies, which is the consistency, but also the determination. And I know that sounds kind of obvious because you were determined to even get to that point, but I'm actually going deeper with that because then coming out of the Olympics, then you mentioned earlier about coming into like some European competitions and things and not doing so well and all of that stuff. But then obviously the determination to keep going because then you've still got then the Commonwealth Games, then you've still got obviously another Olympics, which we'll come to in a moment. But that whole mindset of not giving up, I'm going to do this again, I'm going to do better next time, I'm going to, however that manifests for you, I think is really important because not to state the obvious here, mate, I know that people were saying how many Olympics is it going to be? Is it going to be three, four? But actually, some people will get to the Olympics and think, well, I'm an Olympian now, and I've kind of done that, and they wouldn't necessarily have the same fire. Personally, I've seen that, but you still had the fire in your belly of like, I'm going to keep charging forward. Um, how did you do that? I mean, what's the secret to not only getting to a high level, but getting back to a high level and staying, at the top of your game? That whole concept, I think.
Yeah, I mean, my goals as a kid growing up, obviously I wanted to get to the Olympics, but I wanted to win a medal at the Olympics was the dream I had for since I was a little kid. So I guess in my mind, I hadn't completed it yet. Like I had obviously achieved a fair bit at a pretty young age, but hadn't really gotten close to anything that I wanted to achieve in judo. I hadn't done anything at a world championships or major events sort of on the world tour at the Olympic Games. So I there was never a part after Rio that like I questioned if I wanted to do it again. I was like, that was a great learning experience and a great stepping stone that I probably wasn't expecting, but that's just going to get me closer towards the bigger goal, which is to try to do well at the Olympics, do well at the World Championships. But I mean, to be honest, after Rio, I haven't really talked about this a lot either, but I think I experienced like a little bit of like guilt, like almost imposter syndrome a little bit after um that Olympic experience as well, just having qualified so young and I knew some of the people that were much, much better and more experienced than me from other countries that hadn't qualified for that Olympics. So in a way, I almost felt like I had to go again and had to qualify again to sort of prove it to myself that I deserved to be there. It was a little bit of a funny one that it sort of only took me, I guess, like maybe even only even in the last couple of years that I sort of felt fully deserving of that experience. I guess until I had achieved more in my career, I didn't necessarily feel like I deserved it. So it was a little bit of a tricky one, to be honest, but that gave me a huge amount of motivation to like wanting to prove, not really to anybody else, but just to myself that I deserved to be in that position again.
That's cool. I mean, so this is something. I mean, not cool for you to go through, but it's a cool answer because first of all, people don't realize that. But yeah, I mean, I was thinking that 18 and that amount of stuff being on your shoulders and just the whole thing. I mean, that's another thing though. When you came out of that Olympics and there's like the not only the wind down of the ceremony and all that, but like the whole recovery period, mentally and emotionally now afterwards. Um, I want to touch on it briefly because I mean, I'm not sure like how much support you actually get. Obviously, you have the support of family in your case, but not everybody has that. And it strikes me because I have heard of like, athletes feeling quite low and things like that, not because of like whether it meets their expectations or not. But even when it does, even when they do really well, I've still heard of like, and you'll be able to share a lot more about this than myself. But like even when they do really well, because that goal's been finished, there is like a high, but it's also like a low, and all of that kind of stuff. And people don't see that, because the Olympics kind of wrap up, and yes, there are some very good interviews with athletes and stuff, but like from the general public, a lot of it winds down, and people kind of go like out of the picture. So for you, in terms of like that initial recovery, I know we have touched on this where you said about some of those subsequent competitions, but I'm talking right after that Olympics, the imposter syndrome, the guilt, all that type of stuff. How did you start to handle it and process it immediately afterwards? Was it mainly with the help of family or like other people around you?
Yeah, so pretty much as soon as I got home from 2016, had a pretty good holiday after 2016, and I didn't really think all too much about any of those sort of clouds in my head or anything like that. I just sort of like had a great time for probably like 4 or 5 weeks after the Olympics. And when I got back home, I had to have knee surgery. I'd had a few issues going on with my knee right before the Olympics, and so that sort of gave me some forced downtime where I was sort of just processing this experience. And I'm also only 18, so I want to do what 18-year-olds want to do. I want to go out and drink and like have fun with my friends and things like that. So obviously some of that stuff is good for your social life, but it's not necessarily that good for your physical, mental well-being. And I sort of just got maybe a little bit caught up in how cool it was that I had been to the Olympics, and then sort of started to slowly get back on track. But that sort of, I probably didn't really massively experience that, I guess, those post-Olympic blues that a lot of athletes talk about in Rio. But um, when I came back from Paris last year, I felt it massively. Like I had obviously heard from lots of different athletes talking about it, and I haven't won an Olympic gold medal, so I don't know what that would feel like. But I had even heard from other athletes similar to you that even if they achieve everything they ever wanted, it's like, what's next? Like what am I searching for now? What's my goals? And um, I certainly felt like that after Paris. That was quite a confronting experience, I think. Even like the next morning after I woke up in Paris, where I was just lost. I was like, what do I do now? Like I've worked so hard for so many years, and the build up to Paris, especially with dealing with a pretty serious injury, was so stressful and so intense that when it was over, it was this really strange sort of experience. Like I didn't know what to do with myself at all. So um, I was very, very lucky that my family had been with me during like all of those times. My brother obviously competed in Rio. He was going through his own challenges, which was tough for him too. And but certainly in Paris, I spent a lot of time with my family for the couple of days after I competed in Paris because I needed to sort of just like shell up a little bit. I didn't want to be super bubbly and outgoing and extroverted. Like that's not necessarily in my personality anyway, but I just sort of needed those like little bit of comforts of just like pulling back a little bit and I tried to enjoy. I definitely enjoyed the experience for the next sort of week, and I had a little holiday after Paris. But by the time I came back to Sydney, I had this huge crash for probably 2 or 3 weeks after I got back to Sydney, where what I thought were all the things I really wanted to do that were fun, but every time I sort of just sat down and had downtime, had nothing to do, I just like had this like huge overwhelming sense of like negative emotion. It was super strange. Like it's really hard to explain to people that haven't experienced it yet because they just feel like you should just be on top of the world, even though obviously the Olympics result was disappointing, but you work so hard for so long at this one thing, and then when that thing's done, you're just like, well, what's next? Like, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do now? I wake up in the morning and do I train? Do I diet? Do I drink? Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I don't know. No one tells you what you're supposed to do after. They just sort of tell you, they prepare you right up until the moment that you step off the mat, and then after that, it's a free for all. It's whatever you want.
Yeah, that's the strange thing I've seen over and over actually, and it's something I feel quite strongly about. Is athletes come out of competitions in terms of obviously specific events, but also in terms of retirement and things as well when they actually finish up competing and all different things like that. And there's like an abyss there. There's like a concept of if they've got good family support and things like that. It does help, but not everyone has that, and even then it can be a struggle. But generally speaking, they step out and obviously being used to certain patterns and certain training regimes and a very structured kind of mindset and all of this type of stuff. And I see that over and over where I speak to people, and they come out of that and they just think like, what do I do? But before we go into that though, I do just want to get your thoughts on, just quickly on the last year's Olympics as well, because. I know we talked about the first one, we talk about this one, and then for the latter part of this, I also want to focus on a bit more of your speaking and some of the other things you do as well, because that really deserves a mention. And your future plans in the sport. There's a few other things, but in terms of like, yeah, that other Olympics, because I'm not going to overlook that. We were talking about the first one, we were talking about 2016, then to 2024, even getting back there, incredible. Like I was saying earlier, I mean, getting to one, the amount of years and the amount of dedication it takes. Obviously, you had the Commonwealth Games in between as well, and you had some great stuff there. So maybe we can touch on that briefly as well. But the same kind of thing, just in your own words, because I think it's testament to your perseverance, your determination, getting back there. I think there'll be a few interesting mindset related topics in the last Olympics, because even going back to what you said earlier, being so young in the first one, well, I mean, you're still young now, but then obviously you have more years of experience on top of it. Like you were saying earlier, the expectations change and your kind of perception of the experience sounds like it's changed a bit. So I think that'll be interesting. But just, yeah, your highlights, your takeaways, some of the lessons learned, that kind of thing from this last one.
Yeah, so I went through the qualifying process for Tokyo, and it came down to sort of briefly touching on it before the very last qualifying tournament for Tokyo, and I didn't qualify. I missed out on qualifying by what turned out to be one spot. So that was like really, really devastating, and it probably took me 4 or 5 months to get back into training after that because I just didn't know if I wanted to do it again. It just like the disappointment was so great and it hurt so much that I just didn't know if I was willing to try again and risk going through that experience of failure again. Um, but decided my brother qualified for Tokyo, which helped me massively because I got to see him compete. And I thought I want us to do this together again. I felt like he sort of felt like he missed out on the full thing because I wasn't there, and I feel like I missed out because I wasn't there as well. Um, so we sort of like bounced back from that and worked really hard sort of over that next 6 to 12 month period. Just to, I guess, I couldn't have had a stronger motivation if you tried, like the biggest disappointment of my whole career. So the following year we got to go to the Com Games together, which was really, really cool. And obviously it's not the Olympics, but it felt like we had sort of achieved something together again. We got to both be back at a major event, and we both won bronze at the Commonwealth Games, it was a really nice moment. Obviously I wanted to win gold, but both of us winning bronze there together on the same day was a really, really cool and special moment that we got to share with our family as well, which is really cool. So I sort of had a really firm and strong motivation for the next 2 years going into the qualifying for Paris, and just got hit by some really tough injuries. I broke my leg sort of the end of 2022. Worked my way back from that in ridiculously short period of time just so I could keep trying to compete and qualify, and got some great results. And then I got thrown onto my shoulder, dislocated my shoulder, had to have shoulder surgery in the early 2023 and rushed the recovery for that just so I could get back to competing again. And at the end of 2023, I'd got myself back into a qualifying position to qualify direct for Paris. Um, and at a training camp in Melbourne, January 2024, I one of the last sessions before we we're flying out overseas, I had an accident at training. My knee popped, knew it was bad straight away. Physio came in, physio had a look at it, said, you've ruptured your ACL. I'm pretty confident you've ruptured your ACL. So I got a scan. It showed that I had done my ACL, and essentially the options are get surgery, 9 to 12 months recovery, miss Paris. You're gonna have a really good excuse for why you're not in Paris. Everyone's gonna ask why you're there, and just say, "Oh, I got injured." But um, when that happened, it's like sort of brought me straight back to the feelings that I had when I missed out on qualifying for Tokyo, and I just knew that I couldn't not try. Like if I didn't know how hard it was gonna be, and to be honest, if they had told me how hard it actually was gonna be, I maybe my attitude would have been slightly different about it, but I thought I sort of just rolled with it and just said, it's all good. Like, I'm just going to push through it. It's going to be fine. And I just sort of had this mentality that just keep working hard. It's going to be fine. And the reality was it wasn't fine at all. My knee was absolutely torched for about 6 months. But um, I just like kept reminding myself of like what, to be honest, I was probably more motivated by the fear of the negative than the positive for a lot of that sort of 6 month period, which lots of athletes are motivated by different things. And obviously, I really wanted to get to Paris for the experience of getting to Paris. But so much, I think, of what was driving me for that 6 month period was just running away from that feeling of missing out like I had in Tokyo. And the worse my knee got and the more I was struggling, the more pain I was in, the less I was training, the feelings got like stronger and stronger and stronger of what that was going to be like if I missed out again for Paris. And I was pretty confident in my head. I never spoke about it with anybody up until after Paris, but I was pretty confident that if I missed out on Paris, that I would be done with judo, that I wasn't gonna um I just I didn't think I would be able to come back from that twice. I thought it took everything to come back from Tokyo, and I thought if this happens again in Paris, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of things that are out of my control, I just didn't think I would be able to push through and do that twice. So, um, lots of different sort of driving factors over that couple of months, but just I just never, I had a lot of doubt in my ability and a lot of doubt if I would be able to do it, but I never lost sight of like what I was trying to achieve. Like I worked so hard for those couple of months. And to be honest, like it took everything I had. There was a lot of nights I was crying with my family because I just like didn't know how much longer I could keep pushing my body to the limit. But um, yeah, it all worked out in the end. It's a nice, I guess the fairy tale ending was that I go to Paris and win gold. But um, to be honest, like the fairy tale ending for me in this was getting to Paris. Like it just still wanted to achieve something when I got there. And I trained so hard in the preparation to be able to arrive on the day and perform the best that I could. And I fought pretty well in Paris. And I didn't have enough preparation to be able to do any better. So um, obviously, I was disappointed with the result in Paris. Going out first round is tough. At such a big event, and again, it was that feeling of like I've worked so hard and it's over. Like fight one on day one of the Olympics, I was out. So it's just over so quickly. But um, I never was disappointed really that much with the result. Like I could just appreciate how much it took to get there. And I was okay, to be honest. Like it was just, yeah, it was tough and it was hard. And I certainly don't envy anybody that has to go through a similar sort of process 6 months out from the Olympics. But yeah, I mean, in terms of lessons learned from that experience, like they're things like I'll hold with me for the rest of my life for sure.
That is an amazing story. I mean, I'm just taking it in because the behind the scenes, the injury, being up against it like that, and yeah, like you say there. I mean, the missing out versus like getting in there and giving it your best shot, like a total do or die kind of situation. I mean,
Mm.
wow, that is again, that's testament to like what you've got in here, and the kind of person you are, and I mean that genuinely because a lot of people would fold with that kind of pressure. So wow. Okay, now as I mentioned, we'll run to about the hour or so because obviously I know it's late there, and that'll be a good amount for people to take in as well, I think. What was I going to say? The whole speaking side of things, I will talk about your future plans in the sport as well, but I just want to take a detour for a minute just to talk about like, you speaking in schools and helping people, contributing to people's lives is really the way I look at it, because like showing them what's possible, showing them what they can achieve. I'd like to talk. I mean, there's a few different things with this. There's like the inspiration of why you do it. There's also some of your highlights, as to like maybe some of your favorite moments of doing that, and like kind of how it feels, when you see kids or when you see people in general thinking, wow, I can do something big with my life, like Josh and like you and all this kind of thing. Encouraging people to keep going. I just think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing because, like I said earlier, mate, I mean this from my heart. Some people get to the top, but they don't really give back that much. Other people give back a lot, but personally, I only deal with the ones who contribute to people in some kind of meaningful way. So, yeah, just tell us a little bit about what you do with that, why you do it, and yeah, I'd just love to hear more about it, basically.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I think when I was sort of growing up in judo, the judo club that I've always trained at my whole life is the club that my parents run. So it was just a culture that we had at our club that once you were a senior and you were competing as a senior, that you would come to the end of the kids class and just train with the little kids. And it was just so much of that was just showing them like what they can do if they keep working harder. So it's just something that I didn't think too much of when I was growing up younger, but I think it's just that's where it sort of just started, this idea that once you get to a certain point that you can help other people get to your point as well, and you just to sort of bring up the people that come after you. And then probably it was around about 2018, 19 that the Australian Olympic Committee set up a program where they would send athletes out to schools. And I'd done a little bit of speaking, just sort of going back to my own old high school and things like that, but never anything formal, never anything structured. And I went to this training, me and Nathan went to this training and we did the sort of training. I thought, yeah, like this is a pretty good opportunity. It might be a fun way to sort of go out to some schools, and it was a good way to sort of make a little bit of money, to be truthful as well at the time. And um, over the next couple of years, just like started to get out to some schools and really just like see the excitement that they have when you just come in as introduced as this is Josh, he went to the Olympics. And just like that, they're just like, you have their attention like gripped, like they're just hooked on everything you have to say. So I feel like because of that, because I knew that like how much of an impact you could have just by the fact that you're an Olympian, that I almost like owed it to myself to be able to share my story in a more positive way. So like went through some sort of different training and tried to learn on how to speaking a little bit better and got some help from quite a lot of different people that were really, really amazing sort of mentors for me. Um, and then I guess just over time, the story develops. Like I'm talking to these kids in real time about my experiences, and my experiences are constantly changing. Like it's going from the 18-year-old kid that went to the Olympics and then the 23-year-old guy that missed out on qualifying for the Olympics. So how do I then share those experiences with 14, 15-year-olds when I'm still sort of struggling to deal with it as well? And often it was like a little bit of therapy almost, because you go out to schools and you're talking about some of the really hard moments of your life, and the more you talk about them, the easier it is, I think. But um, then I guess in the last couple of years, Nathan and I just decided that we wanted to branch out a little bit, be a little bit more independent so that we could build the relationships with schools ourselves, so that we could like build the connections with the schools, be able to work with our students a little bit more often throughout the year, just so that it's great when you come in and you inspire 100 kids for an hour, and that's great. But then you leave, they never see you again, and most of them will forget everything you told them 4 hours later once they go home. So um, we felt really passionate about wanting to keep in contact with the schools, go back to the schools and work with the same students like more frequently throughout the year and learn more about what their goals are, try to help them achieve their goals. And I think sort of similar to what we touched on earlier, that so much of what I think young people can get out of our experiences are not all of the successes. Like obviously they want to know what's the Olympics like and what's the village like and cool stuff like that. But I think my story has been really relatable for a lot of young people, because there has been so many times that I have missed out on achieving my goals. I've been sitting in the stands crying when I've lost at competitions. I've had injuries and all these different things. So I'm obviously very grateful that I have achieved, a fair bit in my sport, but still a long way to go in terms of what I would like to achieve. But I think being able to be quite vulnerable in front of young people and share a lot of those sort of failures can be a really motivating experience for them as well. That it's showing them that it's going to be really hard and you don't always achieve everything you want, but if you just like stick out your goals for long enough and work really hard, then you can achieve just about anything.
Wow. I mean, that is an amazing message in and of itself. And yeah, the vulnerability, the brutally honest quality that you have. I found that really inspiring sitting here as well, and I know the people who listen to this will. But I've got to say that takes a lot of courage to speak about that stuff as well. Before we do the last question, which is your future plans in the sport, then we'll wrap on that. I just want to say that is massive respect for that, because to be up there and speak about like the highs and lows of how you're feeling, and those tough times as well as a good time and everything like that. I mean, takes a lot of courage as well. So I appreciate that, because that will definitely help people. I think that's awesome. So yeah, I mean, the last thing, like I say, coming up on 10 p.m. there, so I know you want to get some rest and everything, but I do just want to touch on the fact, just to close out, that we've spent a lot of time looking back, but as you said there, it sounds to me like you've still got more you want to do. And obviously, I know there's some things with the coaching side and some other things like that. But in terms of the competition and everything, yeah, what's next? I mean, how far are you aiming? Are you thinking forward now to another Olympics? I mean, I don't mind how far you want to go with this, but let's just talk about the future, basically, mate.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I think having had I'm about 5.5 months post knee surgery now, so I've had a lot of time to think over the last couple of months about what it is I want to do when I get back. I've been away from the sport for a long time now, so it really has given me some clarity as to what I wanted to do when I do get back, and I'm not far away from being able to get back involved in the sport um, again, but very, very eyes set very firmly on the LA Olympics in 3 years' time. Like I came off the mat in Paris and just had an instant feeling that I wasn't done. I didn't know if that was going to last, maybe it was going to stop, but I just had a really strong feeling instantly when I came off in Paris that I wanted to have another crack at this. So, um, yeah, I've still got probably another 5 or 6 months recovery with my knee, but then it'll be 3 years, 3 years all in. It'll be the Commonwealth Games next year. Hopefully, go a little bit better than my bronze a couple of years ago. It'd be nice to win a gold for Australia there, and then that'll just lead straight into the qualifying for LA in 3 years' time. So very excited for the next couple of years ahead. And after that, I don't know. I think a lot will depend on sort of how the next couple of years go and how my body holds up, how motivated I still am to want to achieve my goals, sort of that. But um, I know for a fact that I'll be doing everything I can for the next 3 years to get the best result that I possibly can in LA in 3 years' time.
Wow, that is awesome. I mean, still going, still in the fight, still pushing forward. I love it. And I was hoping you were going to say that, but and I figured that was kind of the case, but I actually didn't know what was going to come back with that answer. So that is absolutely really really cool. And you know, I'll be supporting you all the way and cheering for you all the way. And hey, we can do another interview on the build up to that one. We can do it, yeah, a couple of years time, or even next year on the Commonwealth. Who knows? But
I'll bring my medal next time. I'll bring.
please do, please do. I mean, I don't say that very often, but occasionally it does happen, because people obviously do something really big again like that. But there's the whole story around it, like everything you've come from to get in there. Yeah, I would love to do that. I mean, I love that the fire still in your belly, and you still want to achieve so much more. So absolutely amazing. Mate, this has been an absolutely awesome talk today. I knew it would be really good, but honestly, because you've like you say, you've been keeping it so real. You put the vulnerability across, you put the highs and the lows. That's what's really made it like a special talk. And I just want to say I appreciate that. Not only your time, but I appreciate like speaking from here. Because I do my best to bring that out of people, but it's a rarer thing than you probably think it is, to speak from the heart like that. So I appreciate that. If we help even one person with this, then we've done our work, and it'll be more than that. But so I don't forget as well. I'm going to say, anyone hearing this story the first time, please follow this man, guys. Please plug into the social media journey. He's out there. He's accessible. So yeah, just Google Joshua Katz, and you'll find him. So I'm gonna say that as well. And yeah, I think that's everything. You go and get some sleep, mate. But thank you so much for your time. And once again, thank you so much for just speaking from your heart. I appreciate that.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.